It's been a while since I did a tier ranking video for Gadabout United, and just recently I saw just the excuse for doing one. It was this, the supposed list of United purchases since Sir Alex Ferguson retired in 2013. To the untrained eye, you just look down the list and remember how we've done over the last 9 campaigns and you'd think, what a complete waste of money. However, there were some gems in there too, despite our inadequacies on and off the pitch. I will be taking these post-Fergie signings and placing them into one of 6 categories as you can see on the screen. Top notch, solid, mediocre, poor, what a waste of money, and too soon to tell. But before I start, I just want to state a few things. You shouldn't believe all you read. For instance, you see Milinkovic-Savic on this list. You may wonder why you don't remember him playing for United. That's because he didn't. He never signed, he was never privileged enough to pull on our famous red jersey. So the Muppet who created this list pulled this signing out of nowhere. So to cut a long story short, I vetted each and every one of them, and there will be some changes due to that. And for the record, my main reference is this superb United site, mufcinfo.com. I'll put links in the description so you can check it out for yourselves. And just so we're clear, no academy graduates are included, so no Rashford, Henderson or McTominay. Nor will there be the likes of Hannibal Mejbri, who was brought from Monaco's academy to ours for around 9 million quid. So in all, there are 42 signings that have come in since Fergie left, not the 40 that were stated in the original list. In assessing this, I'll be fairly subjective, but I also want you to know several things I've considered in my choices. The fee that was paid for them, the basic salary that we pay them, whether they lived or are living up to expectations, and did they benefit the side, whether it be trophies won or even lift up the squad as a whole. And I'll be going through each player in the order they signed post-Fergie. So let's get going. With the immediate aftermath of Fergie's departure, as we know, the managerial GOAT's last signing was Wilfried Zaha. But do you remember the first of the new regime? If you said Marouane Fellaini, you'd be wrong. It was actually Guillermo Varela, the Uruguayan fullback, for 2.8 million on the 11th of June 2013. With only a handful of games, he left us for Peñarol several years later, and so was pretty much a definite waste of money. So let's start like this. Next up is Marouane Fellaini, a desperate last minute just before the transfer deadline ended, £27 million transfer from Everton. Proof if anyone needed that the board didn't back Moyes from the start. I actually expected good things. He was the bane of United whilst he was at Everton in the years before he signed. He was a physical, ugly player, but he did put it around a bit and was a solid part of the 4 trophy wins for us. So I definitely wouldn't say it was a poor signing, but not a solid one either, which leaves mediocre, so that's where he's going to go. Juan Mata was signed in January 2014 and it was Moyes' Hail Mary to try and at least secure a Champions League spot. Mata was yet another player used to torment us in his old club's colours, but unlike Fellaini, Mata came up trumps in my opinion. Apart from his Juanfield brace, including one of my favourite ever United goals, his scissors kick, Mata instilled a touch of class in a side that was struggling and scored the equaliser in the FA Cup final. He probably should have been given an ambassadorial coaching role a season or 2 ago, but when he was more in his prime, he was a definite match winner. So I'm torn between top-notch and solid. I'm a big Mata fan, but to be fair, the last few years, he's not really done a lot. He's not been used a lot. He's not up to pace in the game. He should have been retired last season, but Ollie chose to keep him in the squad. So I'm afraid one of my favourites of all time, Juan Mata, will be going into solid. Moyes didn't last long and it was Van Gaal's turn to flash the cash when he came in 2014. His first signing, as you probably know, is Ander Herrera. He came on the 26th of June for £29 million, came from Bilbao, he played for the badge and his passion was clear to see. He also won every trophy post-Fergie that we've won today. And he wasn't that expensive to upkeep at 115 grand a week, if you think that's less than Fred is now. And so he was a pretty decent acquisition, I thought, but he wasn't the greatest, and so I would put him in the solid section. I don't think that's too controversial. I don't think he's a perfect play for us, but he certainly did the job. Next up, we have Luke Shaw. Now, he's a controversial character at the moment because he's not playing well. He's been atrocious this season. The 2 seasons before, or if you want to be unkind, the 18 months before, he was becoming the best left back in the country, some said Europe. The problem with Luke Shaw is, though, he cost a decent amount of money, make it £30 million, the most expensive teenager when he came to Old Trafford. He had a toxic relationship with Jose, which we didn't get the best out of him. Something that wasn't his fault, he broke his leg in 2 places. Whilst it seems a little bit nasty, we're still paying his salary. We're still having a guy for 18 months who didn't really play or wasn't at his best again. I have a lot of respect for the fact mentally he came back. Out of the 8 years he's been at the club. He's been good for like two and a half of them. He's not exactly cheap to upkeep at 150 grand a week. Doesn't quite make the solid section. You'd have to say he's a mediocre signing. If he hadn't got injured, if he'd worked out better with Mourinho, if it weren't just a couple of years that he's been good, I think Shaw would be definitely into a solid. But some of the defending this season, the lack of heart, he has no excuse. I don't get Shaw. Next up was Marcus Rojo. He joined us for 60 million quid. He started well enough, but he was never a Rio or Nemanja Vidic or anyone like that. Like sure, he had a ton of injuries. We'd lost so much time, so many seasons because of this, but he never really did it for United. I think you can say he was very poor. You can argue a waste of money, but I think because of the injuries, I'm being a bit kind to him. So let's stick Marcus in the poor section. Someone who I will not be given the benefit of the doubt to was the next person to come, and that was Angel Di Maria. £60 million from Madrid, massive expectations, world-class elite player, but he stayed a season. He scored 4 paltry goals in 32 games, and the final insult from him was a 25% hit that we took on the resale to Paris Saint-Germain. So, as many people completely dislike him, he is going into the waste of money section. There he is. Nope, wrong one. Waste of money. The next one, someone who I had a lot of time for, was Daley Blind. Daley Blind, unsurprisingly, came through Van Gaal. Cost us 13.8 million from Ajax, which isn't a massive amount. He's a young player then. He played centre-back, left-back. He did all right under Van Gaal, won silverware. Struggled a bit under Jose. He wasn't in Jose's plans. But I thought he was a fairly solid player, and that's where he's going. I don't think he was particularly expensive to upkeep. So if you disagree with me, just mention in the comments, and I look forward to reading them later. The next one for 2014 was Radamel Falcao, who came on loan, but we had to pay for his salary, which was massive. He scored 4 goals in 29 games. The only solace we've got is he was worse for Chelsea, and we didn't pay a massive transfer fee for him. He tried hard, he just didn't get any results, so he got more and more frustrating. So he goes into the waste of money section. Going into 2015 now, and in the January, we got some goalkeeping cover with Victor Valdes. Now, I might get a bit of pushback, but I've never been a Victor Valdes fan. I felt that if you could have put Paddy Roach in his prime in that Barcelona side, they still would have won as much. And we seem to have got him because he was free. And I just think we just didn't need him. He was 150 grand a week, and he played 2 games for us, and then he spent most of his time on loan. And I think we had a falling out with him when he left. So this guy is a complete waste of money. And hopefully, yes, I have found him quite quickly. If I can grab him, there he goes. I think you will see a theme on the waste of money part. Next up is another player who had a little bit of a reputation, and it was quite exciting when he came, but didn't cut it, and that was Memphis Depay, or Memphis Depay, however you want to say it, if you want to say it properly or not. He came as the first summer acquisition of 2015 and cost a little over £31 million. There was a lot of hype around him. He was also another Dutchman who you'd expect to do well under a Dutch manager. He never really did it for us. It never worked out. He lasted little over a season before Jose palmed him off to Lyon, where he started to play well again. There you go. He's going into the waste of money. Next up is Matteo Darmian, who arrived a month after Memphis in July for 13.6 million from Torino. I admit I hadn't really heard of him before. He played just short of 100 games over 4 seasons, although he spent a lot of time on loan. I don't think you can call him a success at the club. I think I'll be kinder to him because expectations weren't that high anyway, but he was never someone who was particularly great with us, and I think he was a relatively poor signing. On top of that, we got one of the best players of his generation, World Cup winner, Bastian Schweinsteiger, who came from Bayern Munich. Now, the German club, unlike ours, isn't run by a bunch of mugs. So just short of his 31st birthday, carrying a niggle, Bayern must have pulled our arms off when we offered them $14.5 million for him. He was in Manchester for just over a year, which was full of injuries, and then we shipped him off to the MLS's Chicago Fire. We got him far too late in his career. He would have been good 3 or 4 years before, but then Bayern wouldn't have sold him to us 3 or 4 years before. So unfortunately, another waste of money. Coming after him, on the same day actually, not coming after, was Morgan Schneiderlin. He came from Southampton and he had a decent reputation, but he lasted a little more than a season before we shipped him off to Everton. Another waste of money. He just didn't perform. We didn't get anything out of him. So a change of pace next, and someone who didn't let us down, and we got on a free, was Sergio Romero. He was at the club 6 years. I don't remember him making so many mistakes. He got a ton of clean sheets. Sure, we played him in less important games, but he also played in finals as well and played the whole of the Europa League final. Only 70 grand a week, wasn't overly expensive to upkeep, but I can't believe how Ollie treated him in his last year at the club. He wanted to leave because he wasn't getting enough game time because he's the Argentina number one. But we wouldn't let him go. We didn't play him. We had other cover like Henderson. We had Lee Graham by then. And we just kept him hanging on, and we just paid £3.5 million more in salary to keep the guy. If we hadn't kept him another year, I would have said he was a top-notch signing. And so, unfortunately, I just think he's a solid signing for United. So if I can, there he is, I can find him. I'll drag him up. He joins Daley Blind, Ander Herrera and Juan Mata. Next up, Anthony Martial. Now you remember, he came out of the blue, or to be more precise, Monaco for 36 million quid, which seemed a lot for a teenager that we hadn't heard of. Get this, there was some add-ons of £7.2 million per one. If he scores 25 goals over the next 5 years, well, that was easy, done. If he wins 25 caps for France, done. If he wins the Ballon d'Or before 2019, okay. But he did burst on the scene. He scored a classic goal in the 3-1 win over them on his debut and ended up with 17 for the season, which is fantastic for a 18, 19-year-old. He was fairly consistent up to the 2020 season. He had the biggest goal haul in our colours that year. But in the last 2 years, there's something up with him. Lethargic, miserable, sent him on loan to Spain. He's doing poorly over there. But the thing is, he had some good years. He scored important goals and won trophies. You can't base him on the last 18 months as being that's his career at United. So you may not like it, but I'm actually putting him in the solid section because he actually did really well for us for a time, and it's only recent form where he's been poor. So, yeah, you could argue mediocre overall. I don't think so. I think he's done enough in the preceding years to warrant that place. The last signing of 2015 was Reagan Poole, a right-back who came in for nothing. Hard to judge him. He played one game, didn't cost us much to upkeep, but did we need him? What was the point? So I suppose he'll have to go into waste of money. Now to 2016, we just won the cup with Louis van Gaal, so of course we're going to fire him. The football under Van Gaal was generally pretty turgid, pretty awful. Eventually, it was just as bad under Jose. And his first signing was Eric Bailly. Not much was known about him. 30 million quid, which is not cheap particularly, from Villarreal. He seemed to have the attributes of a quality centre-back. Fast, tall, long-legged, uncompromising, fearless. And it was easy to get confident about his ability, but he was very unorthodox. However, in time, we saw that he didn't particularly play well over a series of games. Also, he just seemed to get injury after injury after injury. He'd come back, get injured again. I don't get this, and what makes it worse, Ollie gave him a 2-year extension for some reason. We had to pay his salary while he's injured. So I'm sorry, I have to put him as a massive waste of money again. The next one, arguably the best signing for United in all this time. He signed twice for us, so I'm going to split this into two, is Zlatan. Now, Zlatan came on a free, mid-30s. You think Falcao, you think, how's he going to play? Is he a mercenary or is he actually going to play well? He did the latter. He was fantastic. He was charismatic, worth every penny, helped us pick up the Europa League and League Cup as well as Community Shield, which he got the winner. And he just lifted the crowd. His second spell, we'll talk about that shortly. Zlatan, you are going into the top-notch category. Don't get too lonely up there. Well, the next person definitely wasn't going to ever go near this category, and that was Henrikh Mkhitaryan, who joined United within a week of Zlatan from Dortmund for 26 million quid. I don't think many of us knew a lot about him. He scored Europa League final, scored that cracking scorpion or semi-scorpion kick. But the problem with him, he was disappointing most of the time. Maybe there's a language problem, I don't know. He left after 2 years. I'm torn between mediocre and poor for him. I don't think I can give him mediocre, so well, at least he's not a waste of money. But he just didn't do it for us, and there's too many players like this. The final transfer of 2016 was one that I don't think had anything to do with Jose Mourinho, and that was Paul Pogba. We bought him back for 90 million quid after releasing him free under Fergie. Pogba was expected to boss the midfield as he'd earned that reputation at Juve. He may have done that 3 or 4 times over the last 6 years, whilst being paid almost 300 grand a week. And all we've got from him is how he doesn't want to be here, or his porcine agents telling us how he doesn't want to be here, he deserves to be at a better club. And I think we just all want to tell him to F off. He's not tried in all of this time. He did win some trophies with us. He played well in the Europa League final. He won the derby in the second half against City when, if we'd lost, they would have won the league against us. He seems to be more interested in his off-the-field antics, and I don't think there's going to be anyone who watches United who will not say that putting Paul Pogba in waste of money. I think there should even be another category that's worse. I don't know what I'd name it, but there you go. On to 2017, and Victor Lindelof joined us in that summer from Benfica for 32 million quid. Again, not an elite signing, but a decent layout. 120 grand a week, not as costly as people like Pogba, but still a lot more than I would think for someone who I don't think that many people had heard of at the time. 5 years on and almost 200 appearances later, and the jury's still out to some extent. He has some good games, but has looked, at the back end of last season at least, without Maguire marshalling the defence, in fact the whole defence did, looked really poor at times, looked completely lost. I'd like to put him in the mediocre tier because I think us fans, we have a short memory about how, like with Martial, how players have done. We forget the great times, the great goals, the great performances, and we just remember the crap that we've seen the last 18 months, 2 years, and we think, that's them. That said, I don't think I can stick him in. I'm torn between mediocre and poor. I think just because it's going to look really ugly for poor and waste of money, I'm going to stick him in mediocre, but you have a look and see that Fellaini's in mediocre and you sort of see where I'm coming from. Another player who joined us in the summer of 2017, and I think we're all pretty excited about it, was Romelu Lukaku. He's someone who damaged us in the past playing for Everton and West Brom for that matter. But he was 90 million quid, so we expected a hell of a lot from him. And he started really, really well, but he seemed to do what Andy Cole did when he first started with us. He didn't score in games where we needed him to score to earn us a point or a win. He would get a brace in a game we were winning 2-0 with 10 minutes to go, which really didn't do a lot for anyone. That's not to say that he didn't do well. Remember the Paris game when we won over there? But even when he left, he just slagged the club off. He was overweight when he went to Inter. That said, 42 goals in 96 is a credible record, but there are lies, damn lies in statistics. The attitude, the instability, the erratic nature of his goals, as well as the outlay for him, means that Mr. Lukaku could not be anything but poor in my book. Next up, Nemanja Matic, signed for us from Chelsea just before his 29th birthday, so he's at his peak, you could say. I always thought he was a good player there. He was very well lauded over there. A defensive midfielder who could dictate the game when necessary. The thing is, we never really saw that much of it. And before and since his signing, we've all been calling out for a defensive central midfielder, but we already had one. So either Matic didn't do his job or we're all missing something. For a £40 million price tag, I think we expected more. Nowadays he seems to be past his sell-by date, a squad player, and he's getting 120 grand a week. He's never really done it in his 5 years at Old Trafford. I want to put him in a waste of money, but I think I'll be kind and I'll just put him as poor. The final acquisition of sorts in the summer of 2017 was the re-signing of Zlatan. I said I'd get back to it. Who was out of contract with us and he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, which means that he wanted to go somewhere else. They didn't want him, so we thought, okay, sod it, we'll get him back. That was a bad mistake. We're still paying him a fortune. He signed an extension but was injured practically all the campaign up to March. We terminated his contract, and because of the salary we paid him, this Zlatan goes into a waste of money. Who is the most undeserving player to wear a United shirt? Now for me, that person is Alexis Sanchez. You might think it's a bit strange, but I don't completely blame him. He was brilliant with Arsenal. We did expect a lot. The transfer was Mkhitaryan as a straight swap. Mkhitaryan wasn't great, so that's not a problem. But he came with 350 grand as his price tag. That's 20% more than anyone else. Now the reason I don't say it's all his fault, although his attitude stank, he admitted that on the first day he wanted to go back to Arsenal. He never really gave it a go. I don't know if it was the players, the culture of the club, but he didn't play for the badge. And all it was, and excuse my French, a pissing contest with City. City were buying players whoever they wanted. They bought De Bruyne, they bought this, they bought that. And we thought, they want him, so we're going to try and outbid them, at least salary-wise. And we won. And we were stuck with this leech. This is a glazer on the field. This is a complete leech. He didn't do anything. But this guy is one of the reasons why you can say we're struggling. Not because of him per se, but the way we run the club allows people like that who don't want to be here, that we pay far too much money for. And now on to the summer of 2018, and Jose spent 19 million on Diogo Dalot, a fullback and one of his fellow countrymen from Portugal. He was only a teenager when he joined. He's still young and gained much needed experience with Milan last term, but he didn't really get a chance, and especially under Ole at Old Trafford, that was out of the question. Since he went and Ralph came in, he's been playing more, but I think that Diogo Dalot, I'm going to be kind and say mediocre. Oh, do I? I don't know. I think he's just poor. It's another poor signing. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope some of this gets really old in the coming years. Next up, Fred, £47 million from Shakhtar Donetsk. Like Matic, another defensive-minded midfielder, and we still make the same collectives cry for a world-class defensive midfielder. He certainly contributed 153 games over nearly 4 seasons, but he's erratic at best. He does have more good games than Pogba, but with McTominay, we say, oh, Fred, he plays games, and we don't. Our percentage of losing is far less. Well, that could be a million factors. It's not necessarily just because he's there. He has worked on his goal scoring. He's got more goals this season than he's had in his previous 4 seasons. I think at best he's a squad player. He's on 6 times more than Scott McTominay's salary. 120 grand to 20 grand, at least as per last season. I'm torn between mediocre and poor to some extent, but if he hadn't cost 50 million, if he'd cost 30 million, I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. But for me, unfortunately, Fred is a poor signing. Next up, the final signing of 2018 was yet another backup keeper, shock horror, Lee Grant, for a fee reported to be in the range of £1.5 million. Over 4 years he's played 2 minor games in Europe and the League Cup, and apart from holding with absolute skill the subs board on occasion when called upon, he's been a waste of salary. Not a massive strain on resources, but we have De Gea, Henderson, youth players. With all these goalkeepers, we have just such a strange policy, and he was given extension by Ole where he's not played. So another massive waste of money. 2018 turns into 2019. Jose turns into Ole. His first signing was Dan James, £18 million from Swansea. He's very quick, but he's no Andrei Konchelskis. He always gave 100%. I'm surprised that he got sold by Ole because Ole didn't sell anyone who didn't want to leave. And shockingly, we made £7 million on the deal to Leeds, which offsets the vanilla player that he was for us for the most part. So I don't think he was a terrible signing. I think the fans love him, and I wish the rest of them had his passion. Mediocre tier. Coming at the end of June was the arrival of Aaron Wan-Bissaka with add-ons. He cost £50 million from Palace. Yeah, I know. To be fair, he started okay, but when compared to Shaw, who was developing better in that time on the left, he seemed to be far less potent going forward, but he did pretty well. Then the mistakes started to creep in the last 18 months or so. Fans started to get on his back a bit or realise that he's not as good as the £50 million we paid for him. As with the rest of the squad, he's had an awful campaign this time around. He'll be lucky to survive the cull from the new manager in close season. Considering the costs and uneven performances, I don't think he's been terrible all the time, but I'm going to stick him in poor. I don't think it's been a complete waste of money. I'm not judging him on the last year and a half. I'm judging him on all his time at the club. Maybe you think I'm generous with poor, but, there it is. The final signing of that summer's transfer window was Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire was made captain on his arrival for £80 million from Leicester City. Whether you like it or not now, I think we all thought it was too much money, but we thought, well, at least he's a solid goal-scoring defender that could shore up the defence, because we had Bailly, we had Lindelof, we had Tuanzebe, but we needed someone with a slab head who could get us goals and organise them. I'm not sure why he was made captain. I think there's probably better candidates. He's not been great, has he? This, as I said several times already, this assessment covers all of his time at United. It's 3 seasons now. If it was based on just this season, it's beyond below. He'd go with Pogba into a tier below waste of money. He did struggle in his first 2 seasons as well at times. But that said, if you take the defence last season, leading up to the Europa League final, leading up to second spot, Maguire was a big part of that. He kept the defence together. There's no way any of you would have said, oh, let's put in Tuanzebe and Bailly, or Bailly and Lindelof, or Lindelof and Tuanzebe. You wouldn't do it. You'd have Maguire and one of them, whoever's playing the least worst at the time. And when he got injured, I think it was against Villa, several games before the Europa League final, we all thought, we knew we would struggle, that we knew the defence would struggle. Sure, we only lost 1 goal on the night, but he was playing really well. And therefore, I don't think he is a waste of money. He's not Buchan, he's not McGrath, he's not Vidic, he's not Rio. But at the same time, he's not as bad. He's been terrible this year, there's no questions. I don't think he's a waste of money, even for 80 million. I think he's been a poor signing, an ill-judged signing, a very poor captain, a very poor choice of captain. But I don't think he's terrible. Now 2020, first signing on the penultimate day of January was Bruno Fernandes. He's a quality player, 47 million quid, we haggled like hell for it, plus 21 million more in add-ons. Anyway, it took Bruno just 4 games to bed in. He played well in the first 4, but then he scored against Watford from the spot in a 3-0 win. He went on a 17-match unbeaten run before ending up on the losing side. He scored 8 and created a host of others. He injected something special into the dressing room and buoyed the crowd. We found an instant legend, or so we thought. His first full season was generally more of the same. Goals, free kicks, pens, assists, no silverware as we missed out on the Europa League. Maybe losing out on that final goes a little way to explain why he's been so mediocre or poor this season. And he has been mediocre and poor. He spends too long on the ground feigning injury, which has cost us goals this term. It doesn't work on refs now. This isn't last season when you went down, they were giving pens for everything. You have to stay on your feet. I think maybe having Ronaldo arrive could be something adverse to him. He's not the star of the show anymore. Maybe it's the poisonous nature of the dressing room. Maybe it's because he is really good friends with Pogba. So where to put him, top-notch or solid? He's definitely not mediocre. He'd be assured of top-notch had he shown some sort of form from the previous seasons in this campaign. I'm probably going to get pushed back, but this is football, you're entitled to your opinion. For 1.5 excellent seasons and 1 very ordinary one, if he were cheaper, he may have snuck into top notch, but he isn't cheaper. We're spending a fortune on him on wages now. He is a solid signing. Let's hope that continues. Next up, Odion Ighalo. We got him on loan from China just before COVID was starting to crank up. The day after Bruno, actually, the last day of the transfer window. And a Nigerian international who took a pay cut to come to us because it was his dream to play for us. He could have just stayed in China. Loads of players have stayed in China just for the money. I don't think he's that sort of person. He had a real passion for the club. It was just bad luck that just as he was getting into his groove, the season was suspended due to the virus. And once we started up again, he come back into the side with the arrival of El Matador. And the mojo and everything was gone. I think he was a solid signing. I think he deserves his place there. I think we paid a lot less than we should have. You can argue mediocre. I'm torn. It's one of these on the border between the two. I just think I'm going to give him a solid signing because his attitude was great. He started to score goals. He is someone who could have done a lot better had he stayed longer and had COVID not kicked off when it did. Next up, early September, a £40 million acquisition from Ajax, Donny Van de Beek. We all saw a little of him in his debut game against Palace when he came on and scored a consolation goal, and he was very quick and slick and we liked what we saw. But then we just didn't see him play much at all after that. Infrequent glimpses of what seemed to be a very talented Dutchman. Like Pogba with Jose, it seems the most logical thing, unless you want to tell me in the comments below, that he was thrust upon Ollie, which begs the question, why didn't the Norwegian loan him out at the beginning of the season instead of torturing him on the bench, letting Everton pay his salary, but only do it in January once Ralph was in? I don't get it. Whatever the reason, and however much I like him, Donny has been a complete waste of money. A bad buy, added to all the negativity around Ollie, which is, you can say is Ollie's own making, but if it's thrust upon him, although Ralph didn't play him when he joined as well. Let's see if Ten Hag is confirmed in the summer. If he doesn't do it under Ten Hag, then Ollie was right, Ralph is right, and he doesn't deserve to play for United, and he was a terrible buy, but he's also already a waste of money. On the same day, we got Edinson Cavani on a free. He hadn't played with PSG since the January, and it looked like a massive risk a la Falcao. I followed him for years, wherever he played, and I thought he was a really, really good player. I was pretty pleased that he was coming to us, but I held massive doubts as well. But like Zlatan, he lifted the club, he lifted the dressing room, won us crucial points, cup ties in all competitions, scored in the Europa League final. He was on a free, so there's not that much. He gets a massive £250,000 a week. But with the arrival of Ronaldo, he's played a lot less. If it was just based on the first and only season he was here, top notch, for sure. Don't think anyone would disagree with that. But he's played very infrequently. Ronaldo seems to have taken his thunder. He takes so many self-imposed breaks, rules him out for games when he's needed and we don't have anyone else. Now he's injured. He's scored 2 in 17 appearances so far this campaign. So therefore, like Bruno, Cavani will have to go in the solid tier because he did so well last year. The final arrival on the day, another prospect, was Amad Diallo for a massive £37.2 million. For an 18-year-old, that's insane. He has shown glimpses of quality, but he isn't getting the game time, so he's been sent north of the border to Rangers. He's going to be the first too soon to tell. If this had been going on a few years and he'd been loaned out to several clubs, he'd have definitely gone into a waste of money for how much he costs. Right, almost up to date now. 2021, the final year we've brought someone in who we've actually paid some money for or has come from a different club. And This was the season Ole, after getting second spot, getting to the final of the Europa League, he was back to the hilt by the board. And so he chose Tom Heaton to rejoin the club. The keeper had been an apprentice at United and we'd got rid of him as a youngster. He had a decent career outside Old Trafford. But again, it's the thing with the four keepers again. We've got Lee Grant, Henderson who's hardly played, De Gea who's been brilliant. What's the point of getting a fourth keeper? Why not just have a young keeper if we need? So instead we're paying this guy. He's pretty cheap to maintain, so I'd give it, I want to say waste of money, but he's poor and I'm very tempted to put him along with Lee Grant. Actually, sod it, he's going with Lee Grant. There's the same rule. Older, unnecessary keepers who don't play. I'm not sure why I thought poor. Next up, after a couple of years of making us feel Wesley Sneijder vibes, we finally signed a young winger, Jadon Sancho from Dortmund for 73 million, which, remember, the German club wanted 110 million the year before, so you got to think we didn't get him for a year. It may have cost us silverware, especially in the Europa League, but we did save 37 million quid on him. It took him a good few months to bed into the team, where the dressing room had turned completely toxic against Ole. As a young player, I wouldn't know how you'd cope with something like that. Anyway, after his first goals and assists finally came, he's looking like, most of the time, one of the few players with some spirit who'll go at the opposition. It's still too early to tell what kind of signing he'll be, especially with this dysfunctional season and the new boss coming in, so he's spared judgment. It's too soon to tell for this man. Raphael Varane came to Old Trafford, and that seemed like a boon. I don't think anyone was really expecting that. Finally someone to partner the skipper. I know that sounds funny now. At 34 million plus 8 million worth of add-ons. That looked like a hell of a good business. A World Cup winner, loads of medals, most of them Champions League. What's not to love about him? Had all the attributes. Well, he seems to have the same issues as Sancho, entering a poisonous atmosphere of a dressing room. Couple that with injuries, and it was hardly the start he was looking for or we were looking for. To be fair, he's still got plenty of time to go, and because he's been injured a lot, I'm going to be really nice and I'm going to give him a too soon to tell as well. And I've missed someone out. I've missed Alex Telles out. That's embarrassing. It only took to the last two before I realised that Alex Telles, he has been left out of it. I knew I would do something like this. It wasn't too much of a mistake. Alex Telles came on the same day we signed Cavani. He came for £13.6 million plus add-ons. Like Dalot, he didn't really get a look in, as Wan-Bissaka and Shaw were religiously played by the Norwegian, even when their form was rock bottom. Having seen what we have so far, I would say it was mediocre. I think there is some potential there. He's not been given a fair whack, but I will be nice and I will say he is a mediocre and not a poor player. I'll say that because he didn't cost so much. He was 13.6 million. So now this is going to be a big one. The last one, the most significant in many ways and the hardest to judge. And so I can't win, as a lot of Reds are split anyway, within social media at least. I was pretty pleased he'd come back, but it seems that City were well in the mix. As I mentioned before, an Alexis Sanchez thing. We wanted him back. He had to rejoin us. We're not going to let him join them. I don't think he was in Ole's plans. I don't think Ole was an experienced enough or ego-driven manager enough to handle someone like Ronaldo and say, look, you're mid-30s, you're in hell of a good shape, but we're not going to play you every game. We can't. This is a squad game. We need you for the whole season. You can't spit your dummy out every time you're subbed when we're 3-0 up with 10 minutes to go. However, he's a match winner. He's an inspiration. He's someone who can pop up with a goal when everything else seems lost. He cost us next to nothing from Juve at less than 13 million, but does cost us £510,000 a week in salaries. And that's base salaries. All these are base. Forget bonuses and all that sort of thing that we pay out. He's also one of the league's top scorers. Not bad for a struggling side, and has 18 goals in all competitions. Apart from the salary, it all seems like a top-notch signing. Well, yeah, but look at the cons. All the ones that I've said so far. He's missing a lot of games at the moment. He's now not available for several games, and it's an illness. What does that mean? Is he actually ill, or is that, I can't be arsed with this, I'm going to Portugal, I need to recharge, good luck, hope you win? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh. If United was still in the hunt for silverware or even pushing the top two, I'd say he was a top-notch signing, but we're very unlikely at this point to make the Champions League spots. Pretty much, it's not going to happen. We're out of all the cup competitions, and some disappointingly cheaply. Now, that's not all on him, but you expect, with him in the side, that we should be doing a lot better. He's one man, and you can't just eliminate all the toxicity in the dressing room, and the Pogbas and the Lingards, and all the other people who we think might be to blame for this. But you'd expect him to do better. It's all on expectations as well as anything else. I'm putting him as solid. He can't be mediocre. Ronaldo's never been mediocre in his life. I don't think he deserves top notch, even with a great goal scoring record. So anyway, that's done. There you can see everything. So this is the ranking of all the players that have been bought since Fergie left and the contribution to the highs and lows of the club since then in my mind. Where would you put them? Where did I go badly wrong, or less likely, where was I spot on? Make your voice heard in the comments below. Like, share and subscribe, and thank you for your support.